The season is off and running in College Station as Texas A&M sits 11th in the country, 13-3 overall, and 2-1 in conference play. Helping us break it all down, Luke Evangelist from Texas A&M TexAgs, the A&M basketball analyst, does a fantastic job with the fine folks over at TexAgs. And again, he joined the show. Luke, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time and excited to talk all things Aggies basketball with you.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I'm excited to be here. Definitely a good vibe in College Station, makes working a little bit easier and makes it a lot more fun to cover A&M, especially when they're winning and doing it without Wade Taylor as of right now. So a lot of fun. Buzz Williams coaches a great team, always going to play hard. Just they got to work on a couple little things, but it's fun to be around right now.
Yeah, Luke, and you mentioned obviously what Buzz Williams has done and the good vibes down in C-Stat. There's a good reason for that. You mentioned the overall record sitting at 13-3, 2-1 in conference play. But I want to talk about first non-conference. There were some notable wins there over ranked opponents. You beat Ohio State, you beat Creighton, you beat a top 15 Purdue team. What did you see from this team in non-conference that made you and the fan base so optimistic? Because I feel like with A&M, the preseason expectations, I remember being down there obviously for the Texas football game, and we had obviously just kind of started to get into basketball season, and I think everybody was kind of in wait-and-see mode, right? Because we've seen Buzz Williams teams kind of be up and down, hot and cold, but, I mean, you got to love what you saw through non-conference play. What did you see specifically from this team that gave you a lot of hype and excitement going into conference play?
Yeah, I think we saw a veteran team finally figuring it out early in the season. As great of a coach as Buzz Williams is, he's always got veteran pieces. They always just seem to figure it out at the last moment possible in like mid to late February, and they're playing their best ball when it matters most as they head into March Madness. But this was the first time we saw them put it all together in non-conference play. I think back to last year when they had the tough schedule playing against Houston, Memphis, FAU, Iowa State, Virginia, but they only won one of those big games. Now this year they get a tough schedule again, and they finally were able to pull off those big wins. I think for me, the way that they were able to win was the most impressive. They finally have a post presence and a physical nature down low with Pharrell Payne. They've always had pieces like Henry Coleman and Anderson Garcia, but Pharrell Payne for me was a huge key in the Purdue win. He's been playing really well since they beat Texas Tech. He's the one in the engine that's making this offense go when they're not getting production from guards like Wade Taylor or Zurich Phelps. It's just been the most complete I've ever seen this team play early on in the season. You combine that with they've got the highest net ranking they've ever had entering SEC play. They've got the most quad one wins they've ever had in non-conference play. And right now they're sitting at 7 quad one and quad two wins. It was one of the most impressive resumes. I think we've been debating at A&M and just with TexAgs employees, it's been the best non-conference start we've ever seen from them. Even though they had the 2 losses, the loss against Oregon looks better and better every week. And UCF is doing some things in the Big 12 too. So when they're fully healthy, they're 10-0 this season. There are 2 losses in non-conference play, came without Zurich Phelps against UCF and without Solomon Washington against Oregon. They're able to go to Vegas and beat a really good Creighton team, beat a Rutgers team that's got a lot of talent. They just haven't figured it out yet. And then they followed that up with 2 really big neutral site wins against Texas Tech and Purdue. Just cannot say enough great things about what they did in non-conference play, because typically you're used to them taking a couple punches in non-conference play, finishing with like 4 or 5 losses, but they're able to get through it at 12-2. So really impressed with them.
And Luke, obviously, we're 3 games through conference play at the time of us speaking right now. Obviously, the time of us speaking, Texas A&M's got a really big one tonight at Kentucky, which is one of the headliners of the Tuesday slate. But again, 3 games in at the time of us speaking, you started off in a pretty sweet way. You beat your arch rival Texas by 20 points. Take care of Oklahoma in a really close one. Hey, listen, winning on the road in the SEC it's nothing to take for granted this season with the way the conference is just loaded top to bottom, and that was obviously in comeback fashion. And then, Alabama, you drop a really tough one. I mean, really no shame in that. The Crimson Tide are, I think, one of the favorites to win the national championship, high-scoring affair. And you mentioned without Wade Taylor. So I know it's really early. It's a small sample size, but through 3 games in conference play as the competition has – and again, Texas A&M played some really good competition before, but as it's ratcheted up a little bit, what have you seen from the Aggies in conference play? Like you mentioned, especially without Wade Taylor, their leader, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that you're exactly right. What I've seen from them is they can finally contribute and put it all together without Wade Taylor. I think back to the other 3 years that Wade's been in the program, and since his sophomore year, when he's on the bench for even 3 or 4 minutes just trying to get a breather, the entire offense is in disarray and things are just never productive. It seems like defenses can only key in on Boots Radford or Quentin Jackson going back a couple years. It was always just a 1-2 punch. They never had another option like a Pharrell Payne. Now Zurich Phelps gives them another element. Hayden Hefner is emerging and playing the best basketball of his career. The way they've been able to win, especially without Wade, has been unbelievably impressive to me. And it gives me a lot of hope that if this injury continues and they want to get him healthy, first and foremost, but if they have to go to Kentucky or play LSU or play against Ole Miss on the road without Wade Taylor, it gives me hope that they're going to be able to be in every single game. And that's the thing with A&M. They're going to get down. They're going to dig themselves a hole. But in the second half, this team just wears teams down. They start imposing their will on the offensive glass. And even without someone who's been their leading scorer for 3 straight seasons and was their leading scorer before Zurich Phelps at 34 on Oklahoma, they're still able to find production, and they're able to feed Pharrell Payne for double digits. He's getting 20 plus. Zurich Phelps is going for 20 plus. And that's at a time where A&M entered conference play with only one player scoring more than 20 points in the game. In all of their non-conference schedule, it was Wade Taylor having 24 against Rutgers. A&M is starting to find production elsewhere. Like I said, Hayden Hefner goes for 16 against Alabama. And, he's a career 6-point per game scorer. So when they're able to find other pieces to get productive, that gives me a lot of hope, especially once they get Wade Taylor back. The sky's the limit really for this team because they're going to just be so much better on offense. And in the past, they were one-dimensional without him.
Luke, zooming out a little bit, I mentioned the grind of the SEC. What do you make of how good the SEC is in basketball this year? Because, again, and I was looking at Texas A&M's schedule, every schedule in the conference is hard. I think there's a stretch there where it feels manageable, and that's – I'm saying that very lightly because it's still a very difficult schedule. But the conference is just, it's the SEC tournament's going to be insane, obviously, in Nashville in a few months. But what do you make of it, just looking at the conference as a whole, what A&M and everybody else really has to navigate?
Yeah, the SEC tournament's going to be like the Elite Eight every single game. It's going to be unbelievable. And A&M's having to go right through that. There are no breaks in the SEC. But if you look at it, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think A&M actually got a bit of a favorable schedule because their home and away opponents are Texas, Oklahoma, and LSU. Now, Texas and Oklahoma are really good. A&M hasn't played LSU, so I'm not going to jinx anything. But when you look at it, it could be a lot worse. They could be playing Tennessee twice, Florida twice, Alabama or Kentucky twice, but they avoided those, and they get half of those really great teams at home. So you're absolutely right. Once they finish Alabama and Kentucky, they've kind of got a bit of a favorable draw until they have to play Tennessee and Mississippi State in back-to-back games. But like I said, a favorable draw in the SEC is would have been Duke's toughest stretch of their schedule in the ACC. So there's never a break. A&M's playing back-to-back top 10 opponents for the first time since 2012. They're playing 3 straight top 20 opponents for the first time in over 40 years. And it's 3 straight top 20 opponents in 6 days, with 2 of them being on the road. For me, there are no breaks in the SEC, and I think A&M fatigue may just be a factor for them. I know there's no excuses, but when their rotation is cut from 10 to 9 without their best player, having to go on the road again, I think a fast start is crucial for A&M in this one because they're expending a lot of energy trying to come back in the second half of every single game, and I just don't think that's sustainable. But that's just life in the SEC. You're going to have to get used to it. I know fans of A&M are used to freaking out if one loss happens because a lot of people are in football mode, but you're going to take your lumps in the SEC basketball race as well. So if A&M's got 6 losses at the end of conference play, that's going to be a win. Anything above 10 wins in the SEC is a massive win this year. And I think you're going to see teams get in at 8-10 and even 7-11. Obviously, you never want to shoot for that at A&M basketball, but I think 9-9 is a perfectly reasonable place for this team to be without Wade Taylor. But if they can get him back down the stretch, you're looking at possibly 11-12 wins and a top 4 seed for this team. But there's just no breaks, and they're going to have to find a way to win without him for a little bit.
Yeah, and Luke, to your point, the latest bracketology, we're talking about maybe 11 or 12 or, gosh forbid, maybe 13 teams from the conference are going to get into the big dance, which is just crazy to think about how loaded this team is. Luke, I'm curious, from what you've seen from this group, and obviously I would imagine for the positive, but what were your expectations coming into the season for Buzz Williams and this team in 2024-2025 season? And how have those expectations changed from the standpoint of maybe has the ceiling kind of risen a little bit based off of, what you've seen? Maybe it's gone from, hey, this team can make the tournament to maybe this team can get the second or the third weekend or get to the Elite Eight. Like, how has that shifted based off what you've seen to this point?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the ceiling has risen from where it started, but over the last 3 years, Buzz has been building to this moment. He's done a great job keeping his roster intact. In a day and age where everyone wants the flashy transfer portal transfer or a flashy 5-star, Buzz has done it through 3- and 4-star players and even borderline 5-stars like Manny Obaski, and he's kept his roster intact. And they've gone from NIT championship in a year where I will never get over this. I think they were brutally snubbed. They were one of the hottest teams in the country in 2021, 2022, and got left out at the end. They played a bad non-conference schedule. It bit them in the butt, but they've since corrected that to go from NIT championship, losing on a buzzer beater, to then the first round of the NCAA tournament. Now, last year, they make the second round, and they take a 1 seed to overtime. So this year, the expectation is you have to break through to the second weekend. This roster is the best he's ever had. Not only has he held on to his roster, but he's added in Pharrell Payne from Minnesota, Zurich Phelps from SMU. It seems like this is the year where it's now or never. In a year where everyone's getting an extra year of eligibility, this is probably the last year for a lot of A&M's roster. So the expectation coming into this year was Sweet 16 or bust. But when you look at it, when this team is fully healthy, they're undefeated, but they can also win without key pieces. You're looking at a 3 seed for A&M and a lot of bracketologists. If they're able to stay healthy, I think the ceiling is a 2 seed. And now you're thinking, okay, this team could be an Elite Eight team, but you can't get too far ahead of yourself with A&M sports. And I'm trying to caution my expectations. But for right now, this team has the makings of a Sweet 16. I know John Rothstein wants to say A&M is a Final Four team, but we've learned not to get ahead of ourselves here. But I do believe that when they're fully healthy, if this team gets a right draw and they just get hot, like they will in March, the Final Four is absolutely in play for this team, but they just got to take it one game at a time. And for right now, I'm sticking with Sweet 16, Elite Eight. Second weekend is the goal, but if they don't get there, I'm not going to say it's a failure by any means, but this is the year, if there's ever been one, for them to get to that second weekend.
And Luke, if A&M is going to meet those expectations or, again, maybe exceed them, maybe get to that Final Four mark, outside of the very obvious, that is Wade Taylor getting back to full health and being a part of this thing, what in your mind has to click for, again, Texas A&M to navigate the SEC slate, maybe get to 10 wins or more, and, again, reach those goals and those expectations in postseason play? What's got to click for the Aggies?
Yeah, it's so simple because this is literally the name of the game of basketball. They just have to make shots. They're going to offensive rebound. They're going to do the little things right, and they're going to play not selfishly on offense. I would actually say they're like really unselfish when they get the ball moving. They just need to make shots. And sometimes the easy things become hard, and they're missing 20 free throws against Alabama. This team went from being one of the most dependable free throw shooting teams a couple years ago to now that seems to be a little bit of an issue. And I totally get it. Wade Taylor's their most accurate and most frequent free throw shooter. He makes 90% from the line. So when the ball is out of his hands because he's injured, it's going to be in unreliable hands. And Zurich Phelps is perfectly capable of making free throws, just had an off night against Alabama. And I think it's absolutely contagious when you see the shots aren't falling. And this team's only made 15 threes in SEC play. Kentucky made 16 against Mississippi State in one game. So A&M needs to figure out the 3 ball. Zurich Phelps made 6 against Oklahoma. That's more than every other player combined in SEC play. And he's almost outperformed his entire team from behind the arc in SEC play. So they're going to rebound. They're going to play defense really well. But if they can start knocking down shots, they're going to become dangerous. And I know we've been saying that for years now. But when this team is fully healthy, they are totally capable of outpacing really efficient offenses from Purdue and Texas Tech, beating up really efficient three-point shooting teams like Creighton. They have the pieces to do it. It's just a matter of the shots going through the hoop. And we're kind of waiting for another three-point star to emerge. They brought in C.J. Wilcher from Nebraska. Jace Carter has had stretches where he's been almost lights out from 3. Hayden Hefner's starting to find his game. It's just a matter of getting those threes to fall because right now shooting and making 3 or 4 threes in an entire game when your opponent's making 13 or 14 is just too much to overcome, especially without Wade Taylor.
Going to be a thrilling finish to the season for the Aggies, and our friend Luke Evangelist at TexAgs going to be breaking it all down. Luke, in case folks have been living under a rock, let them know where to check out your work and all of TexAgs' great work. Because, again, I know you guys are going to be all over this as we continue throughout this season and, of course, throughout March Madness.
Absolutely. We're going to have it all on TexAgs.com. A lot of coverage before, during, and after the game. We were interviewing former players, asking what they think about games. We've got great analysts from myself, Selfish Plug, and we've also got a team of a lot of great basketball correspondents who have been head coaches at the Division I level. We've got guys who've coached at the basketball level. We've got a great content team delivering basketball coverage. And what better time to be following A&M basketball? This is their best team they've had since Buzz Williams has been here. It's a great team to be a part of and also a great team to cover. So love what we're doing at TexAgs and also love what you're doing at SEC Unfiltered. Always great to collab, and it was great to have you here in College Station for that Texas football game.
Absolutely. And Luke, we'll look forward to getting down to Reed Arena, Bluebell, everything in between. Love C-Stat, man. Appreciate you taking the time, Luke. Let's definitely do it again soon.
Absolutely. Let's do it.